Hello everybody and welcome to another Houdini tutorial. My name is Kate and today we will be learning how to do render passes and export render layers from Houdini into whatever compositing program that you are using. In this case, in this video, I will be using Nuke as it is mostly widely used in the industry as a preferred compositing software. And then I will also be showing you how to export specular highlights, refraction passes, as well as isolate lights, isolate objects, and isolate and create mats in your Houdini file. Okay, let's get started. So as you can see, I have a file here. Yes, half my sphere is missing right there. I'm not sure why it's like that, but let's work with what we have. So as you can see, I've brought in, this is my image that I exported from Houdini. It has its basic alpha channel, red channel, blue channel, and gray channel. Looks pretty good. I denoised it just for showing off. I had to remove the Houdini logo. I do not recommend you do this. If you're doing render passes in Houdini, please use Houdini Indie or Houdini Core. Don't use Houdini Apprentice, because not only is it hard to remove the Houdini logo, it's not recommended you do that. I did it here so you could see the render passes and how they're working better, but if I was ever doing this professionally, I would not do that. So just a little disclaimer there. I reformatted my image, and then I shuffled out my different layers that are included in this image. We will be building an actual simulation for this lesson, but just right now I have some test objects that I exported, and it's all good and good there. So I'm going to, that's my alpha channel. So I'm just going to go back to my regular image. If I go down to specular, this is my SS pass. These were a bunch of different passes that I was able to take out. That was my normal. This is my refraction. So your layers, or your ones you'll be able to pull from your EXRs, are all based on the lighting, the position, as well as the normals and materials in your scene. So it's always important to know what you're doing there. I think that's going to be another lesson in the future of how to set those up, as lighting and look dev is another bigger lesson that will probably be a little bit longer than this one. So just for fun, I'm going to do another shuffle node, but put that down, attach it to there. And if I go over here, you can see all the layers that I've exported, including your regular RBGA, alpha, point position. This would be my point position. Houdini does have a Cryptomat plugin. If you export it wrong, which I did, it came out as other, and it appeared like this. So just be aware of that. It's always good to know. And refraction. Again, you can reroute the blues and the greens and that passes to change them. Spec color, all pretty good. So now let's jump into Houdini. In Houdini, we are going to create a simulation. Now, I've been noticing that a lot of the time recently, my Vellum page has been coming up, so I thought it might be good to revisit Vellum. So this might be a little bit of a longer lesson on top of our render passes. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my output and I'm going to create a mantra node. Just so we can cover this here and now. Also, so I don't forget further on in the lesson. So here, yes, your basic render curve, frame range, and everything like that. If we go over here, you can see something called Cryptomat. If you want to create a Cryptomat layer, you can create as many as you'd like. You can name the channel name, the overlap limit, property name, and you can close them up like that. In this case, we're not going to really need Cryptomats. Deep output as well. You can create a shadow mat, rasterization map. Extra image planes. This is where you would add all the different layers that we pulled out of our EXR in Nuke. So we would do combined emission and direct lighting, or as many as we needed for those passes, which is very, very useful. For our objects, this is where we will add our force object, our force mats, solo lights, etc. In this particular case for rendering, I'm going to up my pixel samples to about 6. I'm going to make my diffuse quality, well, global quality 2. And where is it? Turn ray tracing to physically based rendering. Okay, sorry about that. Houdini has decided that she doesn't really want to listen to me today. So we're going to go back in and just go straight into our Vellum simulation. So here we go. I'm gonna add my lighting. So my basic fireman light, my distant light, and my ambient light. The trio. Now I'm going to add my geo. I'm just going to call that Vellum. A really good, one of the things that I've started doing at work, and definitely which helps a lot when you are having someone else look at your file, is just making sure all your nodes and everywhere where you're working is labeled correctly. So if people need to clear up your file really fast, they can. So we'll go like that. Another thing I'd want to touch on before we go straight into our Vellum situation, if you hit D on your keyboard, you can go to the display options. And here you can turn on your markers and anything that you'd really want. One cool thing that I've been noticing about Houdini 17 is that if you go to, where is it? You can, well, here you can adjust your lighting quality and your shadow quality and your reflections, which is pretty fun. But one thing I'm getting really excited about is this, and the color correction scene view. You can add a LUT now, and you can apply it to your background images, and it's really fun to use. And it's really useful if you're working in productions to match your visual effects to your colors. It's fun. They've also added it here in your Flipbook settings, so once you flipbook something out, you go to save it, or go to the file menu. You can also choose to add a LUT on top of it, which is fun to do as well. So, back to the Vellum. For sure I'm going to add a grid, because I do need a ground plane of some sort. I'm going to add up my rows and columns. And if I go to Vellum, what should we do today? We've already done drapes. Let's do a balloon. So a balloon simulation is a vellum cloth and a vellum pressure simulation mixed together, but you're also going to have to load your post processes and your solver together if you'd like to. So once again, make sure all your constraints are working together. I'm going to save my file because, as we know, Vellum can be very temperamental. Today I'm going to use a post process just so I can have some more control. And there is a soccer ball in Houdini that I enjoy using, so we're going to use that today, as well as 2 other. Actually, we're going to use a super quad because that's going to have some more interesting results, and we're going to have more fun problem solving with that. We can do mesh or we can do polygon. So it really depends on us. And one of the things I do enjoy about this is that you have the ability to play with your X and Y axes and make a custom shape up to your imagination. So I'm just going to go to my grid to make sure that's sitting down there. I'm going to add a transform. Probably shrink this down a little bit. And let's see what happens when we don't have any other forces other than our ground plane in our Vellum situation. I always say situation right now. It's supposed to be simulation. Too many long nights in the studio, I think. So if we play through, and we'll give Houdini a second to load everything up, I'll be right back. All right, that's finished caching, so let's see what happened. We have a lumpy bumpy balloon that kind of just wants to float across our ground plane. Now, if we go over here to our smooth shaded, don't want to really see the wireframe right now. I also have a feeling my normals are out of whack. Yeah, they are. Look at that. We also have some division issues. I'm also going to switch over to my regular lighting in Houdini, so my lighting that I created is not too distracting. Now that kind of looks really weird, but it looks really kind of gelatin-like. I think I'm going to go to my solver, put my substuds at maybe 3, and see what happens. So we'll resim that. And all we really want from today is to learn our render passes and create our mats the right way we would like to and need to create them. So, okay, so we're back again. And this is our simulation after 100 frames. A lot more globby, a lot more cohesive, I think. So we're going to turn down our timeline to 120 because I think that's a little bit more manageable. Go to our Vellum cloth simulation, we can simulate the mass of it. I think what I would like to do today is, I don't know, one of the useful things about Houdini is that Houdini has the wonderful option of giving you animated geometry. If you go over here to Craig, got some nice animated Craigness. I'll show you what he's like. He walks forward, he swings his hammer. I'm just going to make sure at the end he lines up with our simulation. So let's see how that goes. Okay, back to our render. So if we go down here, and I'm also going to add a merge node down here so we can see our collision geometry and what it's doing to our Vellum sim. Squishing down, Craig is coming over, pushing it away. It's actually a really cool globby effect. But you can see our subdivisions are a bit low, so I'm going to go back in and push that around a little bit more. So we're going to go up to our super quad, probably give it something around 90. And remember, the more subdivisions you have, the finer and also more longer your sim is going to be. I highly recommend file caching. The only problem with the file cache is if there's a problem in your simulation before you cache, your cache is going to take forever and ever and ever to cache out. So always problem solve before you add a file cache. Just for fun, I go. I'm also going to go to my Vellum post-process. Probably add a detangle. And just see how that goes. Okay, back again. So I noticed something after I cached out, unfortunately, that our geometry up here is exploding. So hopefully that doesn't impact the rest of our simulation. I mean, we're not really focusing on the simulation today, but we are focusing on render passes. So we are going to load that from the disk, play it in real time, and see what happens. I just want something good enough that when I do a render pass, it's easy to see what's going on. So I think that works out fine for these purposes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another null. Not a test geo, but a null. So I'm going to go sim. Looks good to me. I'm going to create another file cache minus our animated character there. I am going to load that from the disk, but I'm going to save it in the background for now, because I don't really have time to sit here and wait for files to cache, but that's every day in VFX. Let that save to the disk. Okay. My Craig. I'm gonna add another null. So now I'm going to turn that off and create 3 different other nodes, and now we'll get into the rendering bit. So now that we have those 3 nodes, we can go in here and go at object merge. Making sure your objects are separate before you render them allows you to place different materials on everything, as well as having your mantra nodes reference different geometry and create different maps, but we'll get there. Yep, that's what I want. So, the 2 things I'm going to grab today, I'm going to do that, a principal shader and a shadow mat. So what a shadow mat is going to do on our ground, it's going to create a shadow on the ground. And that's exactly what we would like in this situation. For my vellum, I'm going to use that red velvet. I think Craig already has a texture baked onto him, so he probably doesn't need one. So just for fun, I'll put a camera right here, and we'll see how everything looks. I'm going to save now. So there we go. Our ground plan is not showing up, as you see. There's no texture on his hammer, hence why it's purple, or the hammer is usually purple. I think, again, we have our geometry intersecting at the top. I don't really care about that today. One of the ways I would fix that is go back into my cloth and probably modify a few settings there, as well as some post-processing settings, as well as my solver settings, because in the solver you can probably fix most problems that occur during Vellum. So I'm going to just turn down the reflectivity of my cloth right now. And if you open up the little browser here, you can skim through your RGB layers and our alpha channel. Now with the alpha, you can see that there's our shadow mat, and we can see our characters in our scene creating a shadow on our ground plane, which is exactly what we want. And already you can see that it is creating a mat where it's blacking out the background and making our characters visible around them, which is really cool. So, how do we create multiple mantra output layers? This is where it gets fun. So once again, I'm going to save. I'm going to go back to my OBJ, and I'm going to turn off everything in the scene. The reason I'm doing this is that sometimes when you render out your mats or individual mantra nodes, Houdini decides to render everything in the scene, including the objects you told it not to exclude and include. And that can lead to multiple render issues, so I always turn off everything before I render if I'm doing multiple render passes. So I'm going to make sure all my render settings are where I want them, so I'm going to go physically based rendering. I'm going to go allow motion blur. Actually, I'm not going to turn on that yet. I'm going to go to rendering, probably crank this up to maybe 9, global diffuse quality to 2, and before I render frame range, and I'm going to go copy, and I'm going to rename these. And that's great. Now, there's one thing that I would add motion to blur to, and that's probably the Vellum and the Craig, not the ground. So for my geo time samples, I'm going to put that to 2. Shutter offset can sometimes mess with your motion blur, so I'm going to turn that to 0. And I'm going to go to Vellum, go to sampling, turn on velocity blur, and do the same here. And we should be good to go for that. Now if we go back to our render view, we're going to save, and we can see now that we have 3 different render layers. So why don't we take a look at them? So let's go look at our ground. As you can see, we can't really see anything. Why? Because we haven't told Mantra where for these different Mantra layers what we want Houdini to reference. So we have to go to our objects, go to forced objects, go to ground, and now we can look at this again. As you can see, nothing's happening. Why? Because of the material we have placed on our grounds, and also the fact that the shadow mat requires lights, so we will move on to that in a sec. I'm going to create a mat from the Vellum and the Craig. Go to my candidate lights. Already I selected everything as usual. I'm going to force my lights just to make sure everything works. And there we go. There's our shadow mats on a different layer than we would need it. Pretty fun. So once again, we're going to do the same with our Vellum, only a little bit differently. We're going to go to our Vellum. Once again, Houdini has chosen not to like me today. So we will click on something else for now. Okay, so one thing you can do if, let's say, this error occurs to you, you can right-click whatever node you want, you go to parameters and channels, and you can go to parameters, and this would pop up. So now we're going to work on our Vellum layer. So if we go to our Vellum right now, nothing's going to happen. So once again, we're going to have to force our objects. Vellum, render Vellum, create a force mat from our ground and our Craig. Cool. And because we don't see Craig right now, reason being, he hasn't touched our sphere yet, so we'll wait till something caches out before we can see that interaction. But we can see that our sphere is right there. I'm going to force my light. Already we can see some light interaction, so we know the light is in the scene. And for the Craig, we do the exact same thing. So this is where I'm going to end the lesson. And when you're ready, you can render everything to your disk and rename everything that you'd like it to be renamed as. So that's the end of this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. My name is Kate, and I'll see you in the next video.